I'm now going to run through the procedure of doing an Adam rollover at the end of the year. Before we begin, it really is important to make sure that your Adam server is as up to date as possible. Make sure, for example, that there are no Adam updates shown on the home page. In order to do that, you'll have to log in as a site administrator, or at least a user who has privileges to apply updates to your server. You may also want to check down at the bottom. There is a debug link. If you click that, Adam will show you which code revision it is currently on. As long as your server is at least on revision 5887, you can continue with the year-end rollover. In order to perform the rollover, head to the Administration tab. Scroll down and find the year-end functions. The first thing we need to do is to tell Adam which pupils are going to be promoted and which pupils are going to remain behind. So, we begin by choosing the academic year. It should have 2015 selected for you automatically. We can now untick any pupils who are not going to be promoted. Adam will have looked at your promotion results and should automatically have ticked some names or left some names unticked already. Once you've finalized your list, I'm going to promote everyone in this particular case. I then click on Save Results. This then records for Adam which pupils are going to be promoted and which aren't. If we head back to the Administration tab now, we can now click on the Perform Year-End Functions option. If Adam comes across any issues with your particular server, for example, if you have reporting periods open, warning messages will be displayed here. However, everything seems to be in order, so I'm going to replace the text with the code that Adam has given me to continue. This is simply random text to make sure that you are very sure that you are wanting to perform the rollover. Then we click on Go. Now what Adam is going to ask us to do, and this will take a short while to load on your server, so be patient. At the moment I can't scroll on the screen, that'll come in a second. But what we're going to be doing is looking at each individual class that exists on Adam, and to tell Adam whether we want to keep that class or delete it. There, my server caught up. The rollover options are summarized quite nicely in this particular table, which shows you of the 3 operations that can happen to a class, whether it will happen if you choose move, empty, or delete. And so that's a useful table to refer back to. This is in the documentation that was provided to you by email. So at the top we choose a default action. In other words, what's going to happen most often in our school. And in this particular scenario, I'm going to choose move. In other words, all of my classes are going to move up a year, the teachers will remain the same, the pupils will remain the same, but the grade will change. And so now I can go to each of these classes and I can then choose, do we want to accept the default or do I want to choose something specific for this particular class? And so, because our classes here are going to remain the same in English largely from year to year, I'm going to leave all of those on default. Afrikaans will remain the same, and so I leave those on default, as will Zulu and French and German. Mathematics largely will remain the same, so I'm going to leave those as default as well, and mathematical literacy. Let's scroll down to a subject where this may not be the case. Here, arts and culture is only ever taken in grades 8 and 9, and so I don't want any grade 10 arts and culture classes to be on the system after the rollover. So instead of leaving it as the default, which remember from above is move, I'm going to choose to delete those classes. Now because my grade 8 classes have been left with a default, in other words they're going to be set to move, after the rollover I'm going to be left with a bunch of grade 9 classes but no grade 8 classes, and so I'll have to come in and create new grade 8 classes of arts and culture for the following year. You'll notice that for some of the subjects above I've left the grade 12 classes in place. If Adam finds a grade 12 class with the option of move, which remember these are being set as the default, then they will be deleted because there is no such thing as a grade 13 class. If you're doing this for a prep school and your highest grade is grade 7, the minute those classes roll over to grade 8, because grade 8s are not part of your school system, Adam will delete those classes. And so now that we've set most of these, I need to perhaps go and change a few other things. Geography, I want to delete the grade 9 classes, but I'm happy to keep the rest. Particularly with these choice subjects, it means that I won't have to recreate those classes next year. I may have to change a teacher here and there where those change, but at least the pupils will be in the same grouping as they were in the previous year. If we scroll down to subjects like, for example, homeroom. Now in my homeroom, all of these grade 8 teachers are going to remain in grade 8, and all of the grade 9 teachers will remain in 9, and so on. And so I can simply choose to empty each of these. The pupils are going to change, but the teachers won't. And so we'll still have those same classes in the same grades, but simply with no pupils left. In the sports houses, it doesn't really matter which you choose, because these aren't set to align with a particular grade. And so when we move them, which remember we've set as the default option, nothing's going to happen to that class. The teacher will remain the same, the pupil will remain the same, and because there's no grade, it can't move it up a year, so it simply keeps the same classes. The Student Representative Council, we're going to empty that, but I want to keep the class so that we can add new pupils to that next year. The touring groups I'm going to delete. We have no need for those after they've toured. And we scroll down to the end of the list, making our final few choices as we go. Once we've selected all of the options for each of the classes, we then click on the next button. Now what Adam is going to do here before it does anything is to create a backup of your data prior to any changes being made. So in theory, if something goes wrong, we at least have a backup as Adam exists right now of your data. That may take a few minutes, be patient, and Adam will carry on. Now the backup is finished, Adam is processing the class changes that we made on the previous page, moving and deleting the classes as necessary. Adam is now adjusting leaving dates for pupils who aren't being promoted, and then deregistering any leavers as necessary. Then processing the promotions, and finally the end of year procedure has been completed successfully. Message is displayed. But now that this is done, the server is in rollover mode, and if I were to just visit another tab, you'll see a message now that appears at the top about being in rollover mode. Now in rollover mode, Adam will assume that the date is the 1st of January of the next calendar year, and that will happen until the 1st of January of the next calendar year, in which case this rollover mode message disappears and you can continue as normal. Now the reason for that is to ensure that any changes that you make from now until school starts next year are recorded as being part of the next calendar year. One thing that you will notice, if we search for a pupil, and I want to bring up a grade list of, can't do grade 8s because they are now in grade 9 according to this, but I'm going to show the homeroom class here for these particular pupils. And you'll notice that, well, the homeroom has disappeared from these particular classes because we removed those classes from Adam in the rollover process. So let's look at Jason Alexander, for example. If I were to search for him, you'll notice when I do so that he still has a homeroom class next to his name. And here it says he's in grade 8, yet he clearly appeared on the grade 9 list. To combat this, you will need to add a new reporting period for the new academic year. So we go to reporting, and we simply add a reporting period, I don't need to worry about any of the other settings that are in here. You can if you want to, but for now all we want to do is to add in that reporting period. Again, you can come back later to set up your reporting time frames. So I'm going to go back to the pupil tab quickly and just have a look, pupil info. So we can come and search for Jason Alexander now. And you'll notice now that there is no default class associated with him. And as soon as we add him to a default class, that will then appear in the list. Very often what happens is people do the rollover and then say, but no one's been promoted, simply because Adam is still showing the past default class, the past registration class that they were a member of, and that is reset as soon as a new reporting period is entered. The other thing to do at this point, of course, is to process your new admissions into the school. That doesn't have to be done immediately, it can be done in the new year, but you'd come across to admissions and then process admissions and enrollments, and you could then choose which of your enrollments you want to add into the school. There are a couple here who've got different enrollment dates. Again, anything that's not the 1st of January, remember that Adam is assuming today is the 1st of January, so everything that's not the 1st of January at the moment is going to want to enroll them later. So all of these otherwise are for January 1st, and I can then click on enroll pupils, and those are now part of my database. So Amy is there, and she is now a currently enrolled pupil. And there we have it, and that is the rollover process in Adam.